Hello and welcome to Newswire, yet another episode where we will be talking about two major stories happening in the world today. On top of our list is the situation in South Asia as we see another build-up of offensives coming from India on Pakistan. And to discuss that, we have a lineup of guests. And the second story we will be discussing today will be about the floods in Iran and the deplorable condition of humanitarian crisis developing there. So let's start with what is happening across the border. The top leadership of the Pakistani military, under the leadership of Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa, they met yesterday and they were discussing the offensive by India as it continues to build up across the line of control. Of course, also reviewing the geostrategic environment and the ongoing situation along the eastern border. They reviewed and reiterated to continue Pakistan's efforts for bringing enduring peace in the country, in the region, and pushing this initiative forward irrespective. So one wonders how a nation can continue pushing for peace when it has to continuously defend itself and its borders from unprovoked attacks of aggression, and why these unprovoked attacks of aggression are taking place at this particular time. That too we will discuss. Now, just to give you a slight snapshot of what has happened in various incidents in the past 72 hours, India has continued firing across the line of control. In Khairota district, close to the line of control on Pakistan's side, an 18-year-old boy was killed and several women injured as a result of this cross-firing. 3 Pakistani soldiers have also lost their lives. Pakistani Army has responded to the firing, and as a result, 7 Indian soldiers were killed and several injured. So as you can assess from this, the situation is not looking good. Now, Islamabad has urged Washington to play a greater role in the dialogue process with New Delhi to convince them to back down as the Indian Army increases ceasefire violations across the line of control. Now, India is, of course, the world's biggest democracy right now, which is drawing closer and closer to a 7-part general election process. Now, as it does that, the battered BJP government seems to be on one last push to galvanize votes with almost strange over-aggressive moves with its neighbors. And we're not just talking about Pakistan here. Now, whether it is the much criticized test of an anti-satellite weapon system that India carried out on March 27th, which inadvertently created a cloud of high-velocity debris that threatens currently the International Space Station, something that the NASA chief has also slammed, a kind of a short-sighted move as it is being seen by the NASA chief also. Now, is it that, or is it the continuing coordinated search operations that are underway in Indian-occupied Kashmir that are increasing the indigenous insurgency, as reports are saying, and turning Kashmiris even more against their occupiers? So, again, another major question we hope to address with our experts is US playing a fair role in mediating between these two nuclear-armed states? So before I get into it further, I'd like to welcome our guest. We have with us from Islamabad, Major General Ijaz Awan. He's a defense analyst. And also from Sweden, we have Mr. Ashok Swain, a peace and conflict researcher who is joining us from Sweden. Welcome to both of you to Newswire. Let me start with you, Major General Ijaz Awan. We have not just seen the Corps Commander meeting in Pakistan yesterday. There was a cabinet meeting, and also across the border, a crucial statement came out in various reports today as a cabinet meeting was held in India. And the message that was conveyed essentially was that we are prepared once again for another attack. How do you take this at a time where tensions are already pretty high?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate that India is resorting to line of control fire across the line of control fire and ceasefire violation, which are totally unprovoked. And we see it as an electioneering campaign, and they are trying to appease or trying to appeal their right-wing voters by upping the ante, and they are trying to support their fake narrative that they are trying to strike those crossing points or those so-called terrorist camps across the line of control, whereas the whole world is witnessing, and people here, the neutral observers, they have free access to the Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir area, where innocent people are being targeted and casualties are those of civilians and the soldiers who are deployed on the border. So this is very unfortunate that these violations are continuing. So Pakistan, during its monthly feature, of Formation Command Conference, they have assessed the situation and they have prepared and revisited their responses should a situation escalate.
Also, Major General, when our Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi reaches out for continuous bilateral talks to Mike Pompeo, and the discussion is essentially around do more to speak to Islamabad, to New Delhi to negotiate a more peaceful solution instead of these attacks. What do you think is going behind the scenes? Is this a conversation that we are missing as we read the headlines?
No, I think Shah Mahmood Qureshi has very rightly contacted Mike Pompeo because America is a very important state, as we all know, and they played a role in diffusing the tension which erupted post-Pulwama attack between the two states. They do. But at the same time, behind the door, they are encouraging India. I'm sorry to say that they are not telling India to exercise restraint. Rather, they convey this message to the top military leadership of Pakistan and the political leadership of Pakistan for exercising restraint. And in one of the calls, when Balakot was struck, India crossed the international borders and did go for a so-called surgical strike in Balakot, which turned out to be nothing in the jungles. So we were asked to exercise restraint since there is no damage. But they are not exercising such a political will, or they are not advising the Indian leadership not to exercise restraint, which is very unfortunate. And for this reason, I think Foreign Minister of Pakistan has approached Mike Pompeo and has asked him to exercise the same kind of advice and to give same advice to the Indian leadership for exercising restraint.
Also, it's interesting that the National Security Advisor Bolton commented on after this attack that India had the right to self-defense after the Pulwama attack and the incursion across the line of control, a violation essentially by India.
That is the most unfortunate part, that India is trying to sell a narrative. They are trying to look the other way. They do not agree to the reality on ground that Indians are reacting to the atrocities being perpetrated against the innocent people of Kashmir, who are demanding their right for self-determination, which was given to them by the United Nations. If Kashmir is their integral part and there is nothing happening in Kashmir, then why do we see 90,000 deaths in Kashmir? Why thousands of women being raped, and why the innocent people are being targeted with the pellet guns? So they are all those people on the street, the youth, the old, and men and women on the streets. They have not gone from Pakistan. They are the people of indigenous people of Kashmir. So when India is trying to look the other way and they are denying a reality on ground, which is indigenous movement for the freedom of Kashmir, then they try to build such narratives and they try to put the blame on Pakistan. And if under those circumstances, the people in the United States of America, they try to advise or they try to justify the Indian act against Pakistan international border, across Pakistan international border in Balakot, well, Pakistan will not take it lying low. It is the new normal that they are trying to create. It legitimizes their right for a punitive strike, which Pakistan will not take, because this is an indigenous struggle and Pakistan has got to do with nothing with it as far as the ongoing struggle inside Kashmir is concerned. But Pakistan, people of Kashmir, and the Indian government, we are the three stakeholders in this whole issue. And if it is Pakistan will continue diplomatic support, the political support, and will keep raising its voice for the people of the occupied Kashmir at the United Nations level, then there is nothing stopping Pakistan from doing this.
Okay. Major General Ijaz Awan, please stay with us. Let me bring the conversation to you, Mr. Ashok. Your expertise in the minorities in India is extensive. You've written a lot about it. You're also peace and conflict researcher there in Sweden. I'd like to try and understand your perspective on what you see is happening in South Asia right now between Pakistan and India, and US's role and in this current phase of escalation between these two countries.
I think we need to see that, of course, India-Pakistan relationship has been on the edge for several years now. There has been a little initial attempt by Modi to improve the relationship, but at least for the last since 2016, it is on the edge. But I think, as we all know, India is, and as you discussed before, India is approaching the election process. And Narendra Modi came to power with a huge expectation, because he had sold a lot of dreams to the people of economic growth, development, job creation, and all this. But what has happened that Modi has failed to deliver on those fronts, particularly economic fronts, job fronts. Farming crisis in India is extremely severe. So he has gone back to what he knows, what he does best. That's to divide the society on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste. And I think this is what is happening. And the election is coming, and this is where the Pulwama incident provided an opportunity to Modi, if nothing else, to take this relationship or take this situation to his. What happened in Balakot or what is happening now, these are extension of the ongoing political drama which Modi is playing in India to win the election. And there is no doubt about that. And I think that's what you will see, how he is reacting or how he is approaching this election process. He is going to people. He's not, when he's addressing election rallies, he is not talking about his economic successes. He's not talking about his job creation. He's only talking about, in one speech day before yesterday, he was giving, it was 13 times he used the word Hindu. So he is trying openly saying that there is an open way of as a prime minister, he's trying to divide the whole society and the voting pattern in a Hindu-Muslim way. And I think this is absolutely dangerous. But at the same time, there is also the Kashmiri issue is coming up quite often in his election campaign, because he is trying to project that the rest of the opposition who are opposing his election, they are supporting Pakistan, they are supporting Kashmiri Kurds, and so they are trying to project them as an anti-national. So this is a extremely strange discourse is developing in India now.
If I may interject here, Mr. Ashok, one of the things that came up in our research on how there was a difference in between how Narendra Modi and how Rahul Gandhi are right now addressing the masses, and some of the key words that we hear the Congress using is jobs, growth, development, environment, the future. Meanwhile, what we hear Modi constantly fixating over is Hindu, Muslim, Pakistan, Kabristan. Is this a viewpoint that you would agree with? Is this goes with your narrative?
Yes, absolutely. I think Rahul Gandhi has decided, because this is a trap which Modi had created, that the opposition and particularly Rahul Gandhi to bring in, to get into this Hindu-Muslim debate. But he is trying to avoid that. He is putting his emphasis or his focus of the election campaign on the economic issue, in the farming crisis. Right. Then he has come up with an extremely interesting plan of providing 20% of Indians a certain income every year, which he calls it NAS program. And I think that's what has got the attention of the Indian public to a large extent. And that has also put Modi on the back foot.
Does it worry you does it worry you when Modi takes such an stance in order to win or galvanize votes? And in the same note, I would like to highlight an issue that took social media in India by storm, where the Karnataka Legislative Assembly opposition leader basically said that this anti-Pakistan rhetoric is going to win us 22 seats or something in the Lok Sabha.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said back, but I think this is the part of the overall plan of how to win election. It's anti-Pakistan, anti-Kashmir, anti-Muslim. These three are all connected.
Does it worry you when the Indian National Security Advisor tells Prime Minister Modi that now the country's army, air force, navy is absolutely ready for another attack on Pakistan?
I think it's as I have written before, as I still tell now, there is a certain possibility that there might be another surgical strikes, quote unquote, by Modi, because the kind of rhetoric he is passing now, before elections, I mean, election is approaching very fast, but it will be a long election process. If he finds that his narratives are not catching to the people, so I think he will go for certainly another surgical strike, which I think it will be extremely suicidal, extremely suicidal. But I think that's for the election purposes. He can go to any extent.
So I want to welcome Mr. Ashraf Jehangir Qazi, former ambassador. He's joining us now. Welcome to the show. As you heard Mr. Ashok comment on how there is a risk of another misadventure on part of India. And here I'd like to highlight another issue that just came in the news, where US has approved $2.6 billion worth of the Seahawk helicopters to India. And then the cabinet meeting where the National Security Advisor basically said to the Prime Minister of India that, yes, we're ready for another attack. Now, how do you take this development in the ongoing saga between Pakistan and India?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious that the relationship between India and Pakistan, which has never been very good, is at one of its worst points ever. And the prospect of further deterioration into another conflict is always there. However, none of these conflicts are likely to, in the long run, prove useful to one side or the other. Nonetheless, the Indian Prime Minister does seem to have taken advantage of the situation, which probably he has had a hand in creating, because right now his prospects for another term as Prime Minister, including the possibility of actually winning a majority for the BJP in this election, which was written off as a prospect before Pulwama, this prospect has now become a real possibility. So in that, to that extent, he has gained inside India, because inside India people only have one narrative available to them. But the longer term prospects for the two nuclear weapons neighbors is bad. And this is neither in the interest of India nor Pakistan, nor for that matter the whole of South Asia, as he seems to have been the chief beneficiary. So on the principle of cui bono, who gains, that's a very likely possibility, and he may even do well in the forthcoming elections, but the longer-term prospects are not good as a result of such possibility, as such policies. It's short-sighted and very dangerous.
It's very short-sighted. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Qazi, for your input. Let me come back to Major General Ijaz Awan. Talking about the involvement of India, of the US, what I was trying to get with, to the point with Mr. Qazi was, now obviously in history, India and US have not always had a really good relationship. Since the Cold War, things had been very strange. But of late, it seems that they have found a new phase of their friendship when it comes in standing up against China. Could you shed some light on that, especially in terms of regional strategic positions here? How much of that narrative comes in the way of establishing peace here in between India and Pakistan?
Well, I think there is no doubt that US and India, they are getting closer by the days. And after the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, the convergence of interest appears to be more likely between India and the United States rather than Pakistan and the United States. And with regards to containment of China, India is, of course, a big market, larger defense buyers of the defense equipment, and for a number of other reasons for domination of Indo-Pacific command that the United States of America has created. So their interests seem to be converging with regards to containment of China. And this is the reason that India feels more encouraged, and India was not advised to exercise restraint post-Pulwama strike. And India picked up the courage of striking across international borders of Pakistan, for which they had to pay a price. But if this interest or the Indo-US convergence of interest is taken to the next height, then I am sorry that we will not be seeing a lasting peace in the region, because Kashmiris would get ignored, their indigenous struggle would continue, it cannot be suppressed, the narrative cannot be changed with the use of force. So if there is a greater instability in Kashmir, so there is a greater probability of a conflict between Pakistan and India. Though I agree with the Ambassador Qazi Sahib when he says that war is not the solution. The conflict will not help both the states in resolving the Kashmir issue. But then at the same time, India would not come to senses and would not realize the ground reality and would not accept the ground reality as to what's happening in Kashmir, which is not a good development in the region.
Right. And Mr. Ashok, I want to talk a little more very quickly, since we're running out of time, about this mutual interest that US and India has, which is a mutual sort of enemy of sorts, that is China. Now, this anti-satellite missile test that just took place, that India carried out successfully, and as a result, the debris is also putting to threat the International Space Station, which NASA has criticized vociferously. I want to bring in a parallel. When China carried out this anti-satellite missile test back in 2007, the US was very vocal about criticizing it, as well as other Western countries. Now, when India conducts the same test, instead of condemning this action, especially at a point where, you know, already emotions are running very high, tensions are running high, New Delhi is appreciated and congratulated. So how do you see this for South Asia security?
It's two things. The anti-satellite test technology India has developed already since 2012. It's nothing new. It was there. India had decided not to test it because of this kind of condemnation or getting some kind of censors from the international community. But this is, again, the Modi has gone out of his way to do it. And it was actually, he even did one more test, or he asked for one more test last month. In February, it didn't got successful. Then second test has been done just recently, which got successful. So I think somehow it is again for the election purposes. And he even, usually in these cases, scientists come and inform this, and the Prime Minister just gives a tweet or some kind of a statement afterward. But he addressed the nation, going against the even election manuals, that, this is as if a huge success. But coming back to role of the United States, I think the United States is as confused as anyone can be. And of course, under the Trump administration, no one knows what the one party does, or what he does today and what he will do tomorrow. So I think, of course, at the same time, we must realize that when after Abhinandan, the pilot's capture, I think United States did act quite fast and probably played a big role to bring that issue under control. But I think it's somehow United States is caught in between. It's a policy in Afghanistan. It's a mutual or some kind of fear towards China, and it doesn't exactly have a policy of anything in South Asia. So it's just reacting to certain situation where it doesn't really want the conflict to go out of hand, but it doesn't know how to realize how to play a constructive role at this stage.
It's a real catch-22 situation, US's role and action, the limited action it takes, because as it does, of course, wants peace in the region, it doesn't seem to be going very further, especially considering the main bone of contention between India and Pakistan has been Kashmir. Major General Ijaz Awan, just coming to you very quickly on the same issue, there has been such ominous silence over Kashmir. What we are seeing now with the excessive force of the Indian military there, Indian-occupied Kashmir, reports from the Indian military itself by army officials who want to remain anonymous because they're not supposed to share this information, is that there is an increase of militancy there in terms of youth turning to militancy. This time, we had a report that 2018 saw 191 Kashmiri youths joining the militancy, which is a 52% growth since 2017. So, from that perspective, could you comment, please, on how US seems to want to go ahead with this policy of not doing anything about what the Kashmir is doing to both countries?
Ayza, if we think now the Kashmir issue has come in the limelight, it is purely because of the indigenous struggle and the youth taking charge of the situation there. And as I mentioned the number of casualties earlier, and now you see there was a conference in the British Parliament where Shah Mahmood Qureshi also attended that, and where the concerns were expressed with regards to human rights violation in Kashmir. Then there was at Brussels, there was a conference of the European Union, and the third one is the human rights violation report by the UN Security Council or UN Human Rights Commission. So if these three voices are coming in support of the people of Kashmir and the human rights violation that the Indian troops are doing in Kashmir, and now lump it with the ongoing struggle and the youth taking charge of the situation, I think it is beyond the point of suppression, and the Kashmir issue now needs to be resolved. And there are no two ways about it, and India cannot look the other way, and even the United States of America cannot look the other way. And now if Modi returns after these elections, then the situation is going to worsen further.
No, Major General, it really brings into question the authenticity of the intentions as displayed by various officials from the US and also from India. Now, what we've seen, just going back a little bit, a few months ago, it was August 2018, I believe, where the US basically cut the program which basically gave military training to Pakistani army officials. On the other hand, what you see in contrast is that the Indian Army chief is getting awards. He's on his first maiden trip to the US for the past 5 days, for these 5 days. And what they are discussing on the agenda is not Kashmir, but what discussion is about Pakistan harboring terrorists. So it really gives a worrying note to the international community, especially to Pakistan, which is continuously putting its best foot forward in terms of trying to bring peace to the region.
Well, Pakistan is trying to put its best foot forward, and we are looking for peace, as Prime Minister Imran Khan, right in his victory speech, stated that if India takes one step, we'll take two to bring normalcy in the region, and we would like to wish to resolve our conflict through dialogue. But the growing relationship, as I said, the strategic cooperation between India and United States of America is worrying. They have entered into 13 different agreements between India and US, and including the logistics, support, and positioning of their submarines in the Indian Ocean. They have also named their command as the Indo-Pacific Command. That speaks of a cooperation. And then the third development, which the whole world is witnessing, when India buys a nuclear submarine from Russia or S-400 missile system from Russia, there is no protest from United States of America. But when China buys the same, there is a protest, and there is US is threatening to put China under sanction. And even the supply of F-34 has been stopped to Turkey for buying S-400 missile system from Russia. So such a duplicitous conduct or duplicitous diplomacy on part of United States is worrisome.
Mr. Ashok, your take on the double standards that US has in recent history, especially concerning Pakistan, India, has shown, especially those incidents that I talked about, of the Indian Army chief's treatment and the topics under discussion. On the other hand, we see this, sort of change of stance with how they're treating just that military program being cut. 66 seats were given every year to Pakistani army soldiers, and now that program has been cut with no kind of sort of for the future for it resuming. How do you take this in your perspective?
But I think we must accept the fact that all the foreign policies are these days of very little of ideology or any kind of, even the countries, those who are talking about the following feminist foreign policy are actually in the name, and they do completely different thing. So United States is also extremely good at doing it. I think much more than any other country to play the double standard, and they are doing it. And I think it's absolutely, there is no doubt that there is no such certain policy or certain kind of ideological or humanitarian view of what is going on. So there are all kinds of, and I think what has happened, it has been always US policy, but of course, as I was mentioning, under the Trump administration, it has become extremely erratic. So we don't know exactly where the administration stands, who is his national security advisor, or what he is saying, how much is Trump
There is a confusion. There is a confusion from the Trump administration.
There is absolutely a confusion. But I think what is going on, that is also being abused or misused by the actors, particularly India, to certain extent, particularly the Modi administration, to certain extent at this point of time. And I think Modi is trying to take the advantage of Trump administration in particular, and the present global situation, because I think there is no such international body there to take a principled stand against this kind of warmongering, and that's what is happening.
Thank you so, Mr. Ashok, and also Major General Ijaz Awan for your valuable time here in trying to highlight a very complicated ongoing issue between Pakistan and India and other regional players who are witnessing a change of foreign policy almost, it seems, and other things. So right now, we will take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the floods in Iran and how humanitarian aid is not reaching those who need it most. Stay with us. Welcome back to Newswire with me, Ayza Omar. Iran is facing the worst flooding it's seen in 40 years. Now, since mid-March this year, flash floods have struck hundreds of villages as well as towns and cities in the western and southern part of the country. A state of emergency has been declared in most parts. The communications with different regions are down, with entire areas cut off from rescue teams. Now, triggered by heavy rainfall, several riverbanks have burst. Irani state media is reporting officials having warned about the possibility of dams breaking and concerned that 95% of the reservoirs are hitting its maximum. Emergency water has been ordered to be discharged from some of these reservoirs to prevent any kind of catastrophe or worsening catastrophe, I should say. 47 people have been killed so far, and of course the number is rising as more and more flash floods are being seen here. Tens and thousands have been evacuated. There are about 2,200 villages that have lost their complete roads, and over 80% of the provinces are basically hit by these floods. So it's a really bad situation. And on top of it, to make the matters worse, we see the US sanctions coming in the way of getting international emergency assistance to those who need it most. Iran's foreign minister has called it economic terrorism. He's tweeted earlier, and I quote, "Blocked equipment includes relief choppers. This isn't just economic warfare, it's economic terrorism." For that and more of the conversation, we will be talking to our panel of experts. Let me first welcome Mr. Seyed Javed Hashemi, and also let me welcome Mr. Younes Zangiabadi, Executive Vice President of the Institute for Peace in Diplomacy. He's joining us from Geneva. And we have Mr. Seyed Mostafa Khoshcheshm, a political analyst. He is also joining us from Tehran. Welcome to the show. Let me start with you, Mr. Khoshcheshm. The situation in Iran is quite bad, obviously, and the latest round of tweets that we've seen from the foreign minister is this is economic terrorism.
Hello, and thanks for having me. Yes, that's true. There are a couple of points to be raised in here. First is that, you know, the sanctions, when they happen outside Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, they are illegal, and they mean declaration of war on the targeted nation. So in this case, the United States has been violating the UN Charter. It's been violating UN Resolution 2231 that refers to and backs up Iran's nuclear deal, that Iran has always been complying with its terms, but the United States has abrogated the deal altogether and violated the UN Security Council Resolution 2231. And the U.S. has always been, claiming that it's been targeting Iranian military. This has not been true under Obama and Trump both. They've been targeting the Iranian nation. We all know that. But this time, they are very openly targeting the Iranian flood-stricken people that are in need of urgent aid. And the Iranians have mobilized oil capacities, but still Iran needs some relief and rescue choppers. And the United States has warned the International Red Cross as well as other nations to avoid sending any such equipment and donations to Tehran. Now, this is because of the, essence, the nature of the bans that have been imposed, and because of the population that has been targeted. This is no more an economic warfare. It has been, elevated to, enhanced to economic terrorism, because it is targeting flood-stricken people that are in urgent need. On the other hand, this is being done in violation of the UN Security Council, as I mentioned, and also in violation of a ruling by the International Criminal Court after Iran filed a complaint against the US sanctions, unilateral sanctions.
Absolutely.
And after many countries all around the world stood against these sanctions and voiced opposition, the ICJ ruled the U.S. to avoid imposing sanctions on humanitarian aid and also supplies to Iran, and the U.S. is showing full contempt for international organizations and for the law, international law, and for the UN. So here is now a time for the UN to show a very clear response to the U.S. contempt and illegal move and violation of all the rules that we know that have been in place for decades in the world, governing the world. So this is the international community that is now...
Absolutely. It brings into question, Mr. Younes, let me get your comments on this. What Mr. Khoshcheshm just highlighted, the double standard, it almost seems that where is it then that these international organizations that were made for the very purpose of keeping in check excessive force or actions that would impede, that would increase humanitarian crisis in other countries, etc. What was the purpose of these organizations if they can't take action at a crucial juncture like this?
I agree with Sir Khoshcheshm. It's been actually the second week that Iranian villages and cities have been hit by flood. More than 50 people killed, hundreds of families displaced. We see pictures of houses underwater up to the roof. And today, instead of talking about logistics and implementation of international aid in Iran, we're talking about how U.S. unilateral sanctions are preventing the international aid from being delivered to Iran. And this is actually a concern that has been raised by the UN office in Iran. According to the reports published on Reuters, we see that the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said that they were ready to offer help, but challenges caused by unilateral sanctions have impacted the UN response and its ability to deliver appropriate support. We hear similar statement by the Iranian Red Crescent regarding US sanctions and its impact on the aid efforts. But what we see also, there's this double standard here that we see at the UN system. For example, as we all know, there was a flood in Kerala in India, if I'm not mistaken, if I pronounce the name rightly. We see the important role that the UN played in providing support and aid to affected peoples in the affected areas, which is the right thing to do. But unfortunately, when it comes to Iran, we have not seen a constructive engagement, not even with the Iranian government, and they have not provided the support necessary for the areas that's been affected by the crisis. For example, I was just informed that the UN resident coordinator in Iran, which is the highest UN official in Iran, literally just came back from her holidays to support the crisis in Iran. And this is a managerial issue that we also see at the UN. We need to, I believe the Iranian government, along with the people of Iran, need to put more pressure on the UN to specifically say in which ways they are trying to help Iranian governments in this crisis.
Mr. Khoshcheshm, just on that note, also what the Foreign Minister of Iran also said was that when the Secretary of State Michael Pompeo tweeted or made comments about how they would help, that was fake news.
Yeah, that's right. You know, Mr. Pompeo has claimed that they have talked to the International Red Cross, telling them that they could send humanitarian aid to Iran. But on the other hand, chairman of the same International Red Cross has told Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif that they have been warned by the U.S. very seriously to avoid sending any kind of aid to Iran. This is nothing new, and Mr. Pompeo's unreal claim is nothing new. You know, under Obama, even the administration that went for a nuclear deal with Iran, many Iranians died because they could not supply medicine from abroad. You know, Iran produces some 90% of its pharmaceutical needs, but some 10% are, brought for special diseases from abroad. And many Iranians were unable to supply medicine from abroad, not because of the sanctions on medicine, but because of the sanctions on banking ties with Iran. So many were, helpless at that time. And now the same thing is happening under Trump administration. Iranians are unable to, supply medicine because they cannot wire money to those, pharmaceutical companies that have this such medication. So the U.S. Some U.S. officials have not been shy of saying and revealing the fact that they hope to pressure the Iranian community to such levels that they eventually take out the streets to stand up, against the Islamic Republic, to demonstrate against the Islamic Republic and to topple the Islamic Republic. That's exactly their plan for Iran, to, impose harshening sanctions and pressures on the country. And by the way, sanctions are not the only way of economic terrorism or warfare that they have waged against Iran. There are at least a dozen more moves that they have made against the Iranian economy, all of them targeting the Iranian civilian population.
Which is where the big question of perpetuating a humanitarian crisis comes in, and the question of double standards. Here, I'd like to welcome Mr. Seyed Hashemi, the Deputy Director for Research at Iran Eureka Institute. You're joining us from Tehran. Welcome to Newswire. The discussion on the table right now is as the floods make the situation in Iran very precarious. There are more rains forecasted for the coming week. And yet we see not just equipment being blocked by the U.S. sanctions that Trump basically imposed last year. Of course, you know about that. But it also brings in a question not just of world powers not doing its role, of the maybe economic and administrative mismanagement that the Iranian government might be responsible of.
First of all, I want to send my deepest sympathies to all those families who were struck by the flood in Iran. As Sa'di, the great Iranian poet, says, human beings are members of a whole. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. First thing to remember, I would say that the humanitarian aid must not need any negotiation table or resolution. Otherwise, we shouldn't call it humanitarian. Yet we are seeing a huge paradox in the behavior of U.S. government, in a way that it issues condolences to the people of Iran while its unlawful unilateral sanctions are impeding the flow of aid to the Iranian people. Yeah, you said about the mismanagements, maybe the possible mismanagements in Iran, but you should always remember that, let's take the case in the United States itself. It's been almost 18 months since the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. That right now, after 18 months, the U.S. itself cannot help its own people in the Puerto Rico after 18 months. But for the case in Iran, you should remember that right now the Red Cross cannot have its aids to Iran because of the U.S. unilateral sanctions. They may say that, okay, it is the mismanagements of the governments, but it is one. If you take this as one part of the problem, the other part is the U.S. sanctions.
No, absolutely. There's no contesting that the U.S. sanctions have come in the way of providing much needed relief here. If one were to understand also the ground reality of this region where the floods have hit most, let me bring you into this conversation, Mr. Khoshcheshm. If you could comment on the sort of demographic development of the areas that have been hit by the floods, what would you say about them? Are these those that are further most from the most developed cities? How would you describe this area to us?
Well, there have been various types of cities, villages, and towns that have been afflicted by the floods. To just give you an image, let me tell you that all throughout the year, that there should be some, levels of downpours. All this has happened in only 3 days. In only 3 days in northern Iran, they have had showers that have, that they should have, experienced in 1 year. And Iran has been afflicted with, drought for about the last 8 years. We've been having very dry years, and nobody expected so much downpours and showers all throughout Iran, especially in western Iran. So now they are fighting, this disaster and the flood-stricken areas pretty well. All the Iranian army, the Iranian IRGC armed forces, civilian squad, relief and rescue squad, and people who have been, rushing to these areas to help their, families or friends or countrymen. They are all there, and they are trying to, deal with this situation. But this has happened very unexpectedly because we never expected so much showers. And by the way, a new round of, downpours are coming to Iran in the next few days, maybe in the next 1 or 2 days. Also, we are going to have the same in a matter of months. I mean, we are going to have a lot of showers and downpours
and so
in,
there are
coming
concerns.
weeks.
Of course, there are concerns as the reservoirs build up.
Yes, but the point is that some of these areas, they have been experiencing, very limited floodings in the last several years, very limited areas, but not in such vast areas of northern and western Iran from northwest
It's a very
to the south.
what I'm understanding what you're saying here is unprecedented change of events, because like you mentioned, these areas faced a drought for a long time and now suddenly are facing flash floods. Thank you so much, Mr. Khoshcheshm, for your input there. Coming back to you, Mr. Younes, of course, it's not just a question of mismanagement, just trying to understand and lay out for our viewers what this region in terms of development, in terms of government attention looks like. Let me also highlight another change that we have seen. Of course, it's been a while, but in '82, there was a major natural catastrophe in Iran. There was an earthquake, and the US played a big role in helping out, in providing humanitarian aid. And there, with time, especially with the Trump administration, you feel things are getting from worse to worse.
Yeah. What is clear with this administration, that even this humanitarian crisis falls under their maximum pressure campaign against the country in order to build on the misery of the people and increase resentment toward the establishment or the government.
Right.
And that's why you hear the news about US imposing even more sanctions.
Yes, absolutely. I was getting to that. Isn't that something even more worrisome? Or could you foresee that the current humanitarian crisis that we're going to see, the floods and the aftermath of it, might push this back? I mean, do you expect an international response to the sanctions now, considering how they behaved in such a dire situation?
I believe this is indeed part of the U.S. administration strategy to even build more resentment toward the establishment, as I mentioned, because this is done exactly during the time that the Iranians are dealing with this humanitarian crisis that has been unprecedented in recent years. So I don't think there's going to be much impact on the U.S. strategy per se, but the pressure was kind of useful in order to get some kind of statements from the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, saying that the U.S. is ready to assist the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society. But again, as Mr. Khoshcheshm rightly mentioned, Mr. Payvandi, even the head of the Iranian Red Crescent, said that the accounts associated with the Red Crescent have been sanctioned, and there is no possibility for money transfers from other countries. So I would. It
is definitely worrisome. Let me pull in a human rights activist who's joining us from London, Mr. Farshid Ariyan, to comment on this situation. Mr. Ariyan, we're seeing a really difficult situation in Iran unfold for the government there, as they are trying to get enough equipment, enough teams to help those tens and thousands who have to be evacuated in more difficult situations expected as rainpours continue. What is the human rights community? Where does it stand on this issue, the sanctions that have impeded progress on humanitarian assistance? And can they do more in terms of making a move or removing these sanctions?
By saying hello to your audience as well. But I was trying to tell you that certainly human rights community are concerned about anything which happens to the people in Iran at the moment and everywhere else. This recent flooding is out of control. It was out of control, and it was really damaging, destroying the whole, more than 70 bridges, the blockage of the roads were more than 2,199 of the roads, and 78 roads were destroyed. The railway was closed. Some of the airports were under the flooding. So certainly the people are suffering in this at the moment, and when something happens, a national catastrophe happens. Unfortunately, usually those sanctions are sometimes not really against the governments, but against people. In terms of the claim that Mr. Pompeo has said that they are ready to help, but how are they ready to help while they have frozen the account of Red Crescent help?
Is there any international rule or law where human rights organizations, donor agencies, others who can help in this catastrophe could bypass these sanctions?
Unfortunately, when it comes to the sanctions, they were renewed by Mr. Trump. And even it is far worse than before, because the control of the problem is the banking system. The banking system cannot distinguish and have not been designed in order to give some possibilities to a voluntary sector. And that has happened in years, in everywhere else. You could say it happened in Libya, it happened in Yemen, it happened in many places.
Okay.
While they were under embargoes and sanctions, the people were really the one who were suffering, both because of the mismanagement of the system.
The mismanagement of the system, and there's no loophole left where such conditions, where such special situations could be accounted for. We've run out of time, unfortunately. I'd just like to thank all our guests, Mr. Ariyan, Mr. Khoshcheshm, Mr. Zangiabadi, and Mr. Javed Hashemi, for giving your time here on Newswire to discuss this ongoing crisis taking place in Iran, and the international community, as usual, under the pressure of the US, looking the other way, as 80 million people are right now in the face of one of the worst floods seen in Iran. We'll have to leave it at that. Please keep watching Indus News for more updates on the floods that have hit Iran and other news from around the world. You've been watching Newswire with me, Ayza Omar.